how to accept an integer as input in Python. So how do we do that? So let's go ahead and create a code cell. So recall that to accept a string as input, what do? We say that string equal to input of, and that's it. Okay. By default, this input function is always going to return a string to you. Okay. So no matter what you enter in your keyboard, this input will always give back a string. Okay. Now let's say that I define the name of the variable to be x. Okay. And I say x equal to input of. Now let's go ahead and do two things. Let's print x. Let's also print the type of x. Okay. So let's run this and see what happens. Okay, let's now enter an integer. Let's say 123. 123 is the integer that I enter. Notice what happens. Input was 123, 123. 123 gets printed, nothing fancy there. But notice what the type of x is. The type of x is str. Okay, it's a string. Okay, so how will this look like? So let me go to a code cell, new code cell, and just run this. That will show you what x holds, right? X holds this string containing 123. Okay, it's a string. It's not the integer 123. It is 123 within quotes. Okay, within single quotes, that is what you have. So it is a string by default. Okay, you have to always remember this. Input of will always return a string. No matter what you type in the input area, input of will process that as a string. Okay, now how do we get an integer then? So is there no way to accept an integer? Thankfully, Python provides a way. So first you accept this value x. Okay, let's call it string, right? So anyway, it's going to be a string. So let's call it string. Now, if you want to get an integer, what you do is you convert it into an integer. So you say int of string. Okay, this converts your string into an integer. Now you can assign this to a new variable, let's say x. Okay, now let's do two things. Let us print x. Let us also print the type of x and see what happens. So if you run this, let's again enter 123. Okay, 123 gets printed, and we notice immediately that the type of x is int. Okay, so what have we done here? We have accepted a string as input. Okay, because by default input always is going to return the string value. So we have accepted a string as input, and we have explicitly converted that into an integer using this command, right? Or this function int of string converts whatever is there inside into an integer and gives you that value, right? So you store that in x. So now we have accepted an integer as input. So there is a slightly shorter way of doing this. Okay, so you accept input, this is a string. Instead of writing this as two separate lines of code, you can directly convert whatever string you receive into an integer. Okay, this is a single line of code. You can achieve whatever you achieved before. Okay, so let's print x. Let's look at the type of x and see what we get. So if you enter 123, it prints 123, and then you see that x is of type int. Okay, so this is how we accept an integer as input. You first accept input, which is going to be a string, and then you convert it into an integer and store that value in x. Okay, so this is how you accept integers as input in Python.